friend.tech is currently the talk of the town, and in this video, I'm going to teach you how to code one of the components that make the dApp possible. Specifically, we're creating an embedded wallet using Privy. An embedded wallet is an app-specific wallet that allows users to create a wallet using their Web2 social accounts or email. This serves as a way to ease people into Web3 without the daunting process of utilizing seed phrases. Privy simplifies this task considerably, but if you'd like to understand how this technology operates behind the scenes, you can check out my Twitter thread in the comments. We're going to be displaying users' Ethereum addresses and balances, signing messages, setting transactions, and logging out. Timestamps for each section are provided if you'd wish to jump around. Let's get started. Let me give you a quick demo of what we're going to be building. First, the user clicks the login button, and here this modal pops up that's powered by Privy. They have the ability to connect a wallet, but what we're going to be doing is using our email and social. This is all completely customizable, so we can choose to have the email and social go first if we want to. Here the user can log in with their email if they want, or they can register with Gmail, Twitter, Discord, GitHub, or Apple. Let's do Twitter. It redirects us to Twitter. We need to authorize Privy to access our Twitter account. And there we go, we just successfully created an account with Privy. Using Privy, we use our Twitter account to create an Ethereum wallet. So now our private key is stored in this application. How cool is that? We can see here the address of our embedded wallet, our balance is 0, and we can see what other socials are linked to it. So right now it's just my Twitter account and nothing else is linked. Let's also link my GitHub, so that way I could log in with either my Twitter or my GitHub account. Click GitHub, click link selected account, and there we go. Now I can log on with both my Twitter and my GitHub. Before we test this out, let's send some ETH to our new embedded wallet. This embedded wallet lives on Sepolia, and I have my Sepolia wallet right here. So I'm going to send to this address, 0.02 ETH. Transaction successful. Let's give this page a refresh. And we can see here our balance is 0.02 ETH. Now I'm going to log out and I'm going to sign back in with my GitHub this time, and it should have the same balance with the same address. Let's make sure it ends with 2A at the end and has 0.02 ETH. Log out, log back in, email and social. We're going to use GitHub this time. And there we go, 0.02, 2A. And all of this is completely customizable. Next, we're going to sign a message from our embedded wallet. The message that we're signing is this right here. And this is just customizable UI. Sign the message. Success. We can see here our signature of the message we just signed. And now let's send a transaction. We're just going to send 0.01 ETH to ourselves. You can see here a little modal displaying the action that we're about to take. Click send. Transaction complete. We sent 0.01 ETH to ourselves. Let's give our page a refresh. And you can see here our balance is slightly lower. That's because of the fact we just had to spend some money on gas. Last thing before I start showing you how you can build this project, right here at the top you can see user with this ID has linked the following accounts. Let's head on over to the Privy console, and here we can see the same ID. And from this console, we can see here in the users tab, we as the admin can keep track of all of our users, and we can know how many are new, how many are active, the total, the breakdown of what they're using to sign up. And just as an example, if we click this account, which is mine, we can see here I linked my Twitter, my GitHub, the address of the embedded wallet, and when I was last active, which is now. After completing this tutorial, you'll know almost everything that you need to know about creating an embedded wallet with Privy, and you'll have the ability to create the next app that's going to onboard the next billion. The first thing we need to do is to retrieve a Privy API key. In order to get this key, head on over to docs.privy.io. I'm already here. Then you're going to want to click Request Access Today. This brings us to a short form that we need to fill out. Let's click Start. First, enter in your name, then enter in your email. This is important because this email is where they're going to send the information where you can log on to the Privy console and access your API key. So enter in your email and click OK. We're building a wallet on Ethereum using Next.js. Now this is the last step. Since we're just building a demo, you can enter in anything for here and then click submit. I already submitted the form, so I'm not going to submit it twice. Once you submit it, Privy is going to process your form, and then they're going to send an email to the email that you put in earlier. Once you receive that email, click the link to head on over to console.privy.io. I'm already here. Next, you're going to want to click log in and log in with the email that you entered. Click submit, paste in the code that was sent to your email, and now we're at the console. Here you can click on your app. You can edit any of this information if you want. I already put a logo that just says demo, but we're going to actually put in the URL on the client side, so this doesn't really matter. Head on over to API keys and copy your API key. Leave this open in case you lose the app ID, but let's head on over to the terminal. I'm going to CD into my desktop and create a new folder called Privy Demo. You can call it whatever you want, but I would call it the same as what I did just for consistency purposes. CD into that folder. And now let's start up a new Next project by doing npx create next app at latest dot. We are going to be using TypeScript. We do want ESLint, yes to Tailwind, no to source directory, yes to app router, no to import alias. Now let's do code dot to open up our VS Code. Let's start by erasing the boilerplate stuff. Open up the app directory, click on page.tsx, highlight everything in between the main tags, erase. Let's erase all these classes and save. And then click on globals.css, erase all these stylings, open up the terminal by clicking Control and the backtick thingy. And now let's install the Privy SDK. I'm just copying this command from their docs. It's npm install at privy-io/react-auth. Now let's get started on the Privy Provider. The Privy Provider wraps our entire application, and it lets our app know how to set up the embedded wallet. It'll be easiest to explain as I code it. So let's get started. Inside the app directory, click on creating a new file, and it's going to be called providers, and then do slash in caps privy provider b.tsx. This is a shortcut to place a file within a folder. We're calling it B because the component is called Privy Provider and the names can't overlap. This is going to be a client component, so write use client at the top and save. Next, we're going to import the Privy Provider. Click enter. And create a new function called Privy Provider B. It is taking in children, yes. And we need to make the type of the children exactly that. Let's finish up the function. Inside, Privy Provider, wrap it around, and the children go inside. Right here is where we customize the provider and add in all the settings that we want. If you click Control/space, it'll show you all the options that you can select in the Privy Provider. The first one that we're going to need is the app ID. Remember, we got this earlier, so head on over to your browser. I'm using Brave. Head back to the API keys, copy the app ID again, head back to VS Code. In the root of your project, click to create a new file, and it's going to be called .env.local because this is an environment variable. Since we're using Next, we need to prefix our environment variables with next_public. And now we can call it what we want, which is privy_app_ID and set it equal to what we just copied and save. Now let's head on back to the provider file, erase these quotes, and let's do process.env in order to access our environment variable, and we called it next underscore public, exactly that. But TypeScript is going to get mad at us, so in case it's not loaded, we want to make it an empty string. The next thing that we're going to add is onSuccess. In our case, this isn't going to do anything special, but I want to add this to show you how it works. This is a function that can run after the Privy Provider is successfully set up. So I'm going to call it handle login and paste in this short function. All this handle login function is doing is logging out the user ID. Up next is the config. The config takes in an object with multiple configurations that we're going to be setting up. The first one is the login method. This is where we give the users options on how they can log in. The first one is wallet. So they can use an external wallet if they want. They can log in with MetaMask or Wallet Connect. Up next is email. You can either do email or SMS. In our case, we're going to be going with email. And now here are the options of Web2 social accounts that they can use. You don't have to use all of them, but for the purposes of our demo, we're going to select all of them. And they are Google, Twitter, Apple, Discord, and GitHub. So they're going to select one of these Web2 social accounts and log in using it. And then later in our demo, we're going to allow them to link multiple Web2 social accounts to their one account. It's pretty cool. The next setting I'm going to paste in is called embedded wallets. Inside of embedded wallets, you need to create an object called createOnLogin, and then select the setting users without wallets. What this does is it only creates an embedded wallet if they log in using a Web2 social account. If they log in using MetaMask, then they can just use their external wallet like a normal dApp. The next setting is called appearance. What this appearance allows you to do is to set up how it looks like when your user logs in. So here we're setting up a light mode. This color is just a blue color. You can select whatever hex color you want. And then our logo is that demo logo that I showed you earlier. But you can include any URL to a logo that you would like. And that's it. These are all the settings that we need for our Privy Provider. But to show you what other options there are, let's click Enter, Control Space. And you can see that you can import legal documents or your Wallet Connect project ID. But we're not going to do either of those. So let's save this up. And this is all that's going to be returned. So in order to actually return it, we need to make the function return something. So return that. Now let's highlight over all of this, option up arrow, and save. Now let's make sure that this function is exported. Boom. Export default Privy Provider B. Save this up. Head on over to our layout.tsx. Click on anywhere because we're going to use IntelliSense in order to import it in. Privy Provider B. Click on that. And now let's wrap this around the body. Privy Provider B. And make sure it's wrapping our body and click save. Now let's update the title and description. I'm just going to paste it in to save us some time. Title, Privy Demo. Description, demo using Privy for authentication, giving users the option to log in with Web2 social accounts. Now to make sure that the Privy Provider was set up correctly, let's start up a local server, npm run dev, switch back to your browser, open up a new tab, and head to localhost 3000. It's just a blank page because we erase everything from the boilerplate, but there's no errors, so far so good. Let's head back to VS Code and make this not a blank screen. Let's do some cleanup at the top and just erase these files really quickly. And then head on over to our main page. Let's erase this image tag and make this a client component. In order to work with Privy, there's one hook that does pretty much everything, and it's called use Privy. So let's import this use Privy hook. What we're going to need from this use Privy hook is a couple things. So the first thing we're going to pull out of it is log in. This allows the user to actually log in, as the name says. Next, we want ready. This makes sure that the Privy Provider is just all set up and you're not doing anything before everything isn't set up. And lastly, authenticated, to check if our user is authenticated or not. Before we do anything, we want to make sure that it's ready. So if not ready, yep. What we want to return is nothing. So let's just make empty fragments. Now that we know that the Privy Provider is ready, let's make the UI so that the user can actually log in. First, let's just make a small heading so that they know what this demo does. Privy embedded wallet demo, and some basic styling. The purpose of this demo is not to go over Tailwind or to make it look good. The purpose is to learn how to work with Privy, but we are going to include some basic styling just so it doesn't look like complete poop. Heading on over to Brave really quickly, you can see there's our setting. All right, cool. Back to VS Code. Underneath this heading, let's add a button and call it log in. And add some basic classes again. Feel free to pause and go over the classes. And on click, we want to call login from up here. So let's paste that in. And this handles everything that the user needs to log in. So it's really nice. Privy just takes away all the complicated stuff and it handles it for us. Then once the user successfully logs in, we can check if they're authenticated. But we don't have anything to do with that, so let's set up that really quickly. We're going to redirect them to a new page. And since we're using Next 13, in order to do a new page, we need to create a new folder. But I'm going to create a new file. Make sure you're not in the provider. So within the app directory, click create new file, and let's call this path logged in, and then do /page.tsx. And I'm doing that shortcut from before. Now let's just do RFCE. This is a shortcut just to set up a default page. Click save. This is just going to be like this just for now, just so we can work on the other part. So heading back to page.tsx, what we want to do is check if ready and authenticated. We want to not return anything. But what we want to do is do router dot push on over to /login and click save. Now I made an error on purpose because for some reason Next 13 by default imports router from next/router, but we do not want that. Okay, that was actually good. I made a mistake. We don't want to import router. What we actually want to import is use router. And this does also from next router, which is also not where we want it to be from. So change this next router to navigation. And now erase router here. And we're going to use a hook to set up the router. So in order to set up the router, we do const router equals use router. And then copy this router with a lowercase r, paste it here. So what this is doing is the user is going to click login. They're going to go through the login process. Once they're successfully logged in, this authenticated Boolean becomes true, and they're pushed on over to our logged in page, which is here, which right now just says page. Let's give it a quick demo to make sure that it's working so far. Keep in mind how few lines of code we use right here and in the Privy Provider here in order to make it work. So heading back to Brave, now let's click this new login button. We can see this is the demo logo that we have, and the users have the option to log in with any of their external wallets, but that's not why we're here. We want the users to log in with their email or social. So here they can enter in whatever email they want. I'm just going to do soup@gmail.com, or they can do Gmail, Twitter, Discord, GitHub, or Apple. Let's test this out with Twitter. Don't we all love the Bird app, which is now the X app? Click Authorize App. And if everything's working the way it should verify, authenticate, and redirect us to page. Cool, the app's working so far. Let's head back to VS Code. So if this was just a demo on authenticating users using Privy, we could stop here, but we're just getting started. Up next, we're going to learn how to allow the users to link multiple socials to their one account, and also how to display the user's Ethereum address and the user's Ethereum balance. Heading to the logged in page, in the logged in folder, we need to click on page.tsx. Let's rename this so it's not page and something more descriptive, like logged in. Save. And now we need to use Privy hook that we used earlier from Privy's SDK. Since we're using this hook, that means this has to be a client component. So use client at the top. And what we want is this user variable. So we're pulling this user variable out of use Privy, and this is going to give us information about the user that's currently logged in. Let's just double check to make sure that it's returning something positive. So if there is no user, let's return just empty fragments. But if there is a user, in here, paragraph, user, space, and then inside here we want user.id has linked the following accounts. Save. And up top, let's add another p tag and just say logged in and add some basic styles. Head on over to our browser and we can see here that we're logged in. Here is our ID. It's this thing right here. And underneath this, we're going to show the following accounts that's attached to it. We forgot a colon here. And underneath this, I'm going to paste in a list showing the user all the information that they're currently logged in with. Don't worry, I'm going to walk you through what I just pasted in. So here it's an unordered list, and each list item contains all the possible things that they could be logged in with. Now this user object has all the information about the accounts, whether they are currently set up to log in with it, or if they're not set up to log in with it, it'll display none. So if the user has a user.email, then we'll display that address. If the user has a Google account set up so they can log in with Google, then we'll show that email. Same for Twitter, same for GitHub, you got the deal. So now switching back to our website, we can see I logged in with Twitter. This is my Twitter at @ChaskinOnChain. Give me a follow. And you can see here wallet, because we have an embedded wallet. And here's the address of this wallet that we have. But everything else is none. So up next, we're going to add the ability to link on GitHub, Discord, and whatever we want. So that way we could log in with both GitHub and Twitter, or insert whatever. We can make it all of them if we want to. Heading back. Underneath this list, let's make a new div. And this is going to contain the drop-down menu where the user can select what of these that they want to update. So the select is not going to have a name or an ID, but what it is going to have is some classes. And we need to keep track of what the user selects in a state variable, because we're going to take their selection and then use it to then use Privy to link up whatever they selected. So in order to do that, we need to use state. We're going to call this variable selected link set selected link equals use state blank. Now, in addition to class name, we want the value to be the selected link, and on change we want to get e and set the state variable to e dot target dot value. This is just basic React stuff. Now let's make a button next to it. Call it link selected account. on click is going to call a function that we need to make. So I'm just going to leave this blank for now and come back to it later. And let's just add some basic classes. I'm just going to write something here so it doesn't get mad at us. But we're going to come back and we're going to update this later. So that's why I'm writing something, and I'm going to write a dummy function just so VS Code doesn't get mad at us. And we can check out to see what it looks like right now. So we have a drop-down menu with nothing and a button to click it. That is what we want. Heading back, let's add the first select, which is the default one. Yes, we want exactly that, but we don't want value here. And let's save that. And we can see now it's the default one, but we need to add more options. Instead of just writing option a million times for all the options, I already made a list of them, and it's a list of objects because each one not only has a label, but it also has an action that it's going to call. Now this action is extremely easy using the Privy SDK. In addition to user here, I'm now going to paste in the actions that we're going to use. You can see here it's link wallet, link email, link X, and these just correspond to here. So when you call one of these functions, it'll allow the user to link that social. Now let me import in the list. Just going to paste it to save time. You can see here it has the label and then the action here. So this makes it easy. Now instead of going and making an individual option for each one, I'm just going to go and paste this here. All it's doing is a dot map on the array. So it's going through each one, its option and its index. So option obviously is each one here. Index is the number in the list. Setting the key to the index. The value of it is option.label here. And inside we want the option.label here. Simple stuff. So now it's just displaying all these options. Heading back, we can see now the user has all these options. And they're going to select one, click this button, and it's going to call this function because of this. And so now we need to set up this function. When the user clicks, this is actually an extremely simple function. What we would need to do is get the selected value that the user selects by doing exactly that, but I don't want the other stuff. So I'm going to copy it, .find, another array method, option, and we want to go through all of them where the option.label equals selected link. So what we're doing is we're going through this array and we're finding where the label here matches what they selected here because this was set here. All right, cool. Please pause if you need to go over that. Once we have that, we want to make sure that something was selected. And if something was returned, we just want to call the action. And that's it. So let's go and let's add another social to our Privy account. Let's do GitHub. So now I'll be able to log in with both Twitter and GitHub. It's redirecting me to GitHub. I need to authorize Privy. And boom, now we can see I connected both my Twitter and my GitHub. Moving on, underneath what we have, we want to display the user, their new embedded wallet address, as well as their ETH balance. In order to do that, we're going to import a new hook from the Privy SDK called use wallets. Let's invoke that and return wallet. Plural, wallets, sorry. And now using this wallets, we can find the embedded wallet. In order to do that, we're going to be setting up a use effect. Let's import that. And then set up a basic use effect that updates when the wallet updates. But first thing we want to do is remember from the last component we made from use Privy, you can also get this ready. And this just makes sure that the Privy Provider is ready to go. So let's make sure the Privy Provider is ready to go. If not ready, return. Else, spelled that wrong. We're going to call a function called setup, which we are about to make right now. This is asynchronous. Yes, thank you, GitHub Copilot. Now we want to get the embedded wallet. In order to get the embedded wallet, let's make a variable for it. This I'm just copying from their docs. I'd recommend having them up as well, docs.privy.io, but I'll also obviously be showing you how to do it. So wallets is an array, and in it we are going to use find again. We want to look through each wallet, and we want to find the embedded one. So that is when wallet dot wallet client type equals privy. And this will get us the embedded wallet. Now that we have the embedded wallet, we want to make sure that it returns something. We do not want to do that, but we do want to make sure it returns something. And now we want to set up a provider because we're going to be making some calls to the blockchain. So we want to do const provider equals await embedded wallet dot get Ethereum provider. And now this is going to set up a provider that's going to allow us to work with ethers. The only issue is we are on chain ID 1, which means we're on mainnet, but we want to be on Sepolia. So let's switch on over to the Sepolia testnet. In order to do that, we're going to be using EIP 1193, I believe. If I'm wrong, I'll make a note below. All right, provider.request. And this I found from the EIP docs, I believe, or from the dev Privy's Slack. I don't remember, one of those two. Method, and what we want to do call is wallet underscore switch Ethereum chain, but I don't want this. And then the params, which is an array, which takes in an object, and that is chain ID. And the chain ID we want is Sepolia's, but we're going to do some funky magic to turn it into hex. 0x because it's hex, so we need to make sure they know it's 0x. And now we're going to do some JavaScript. Number, and this is the Sepolia chain ID. You can go to, I believe, chainlist.org to get all of the EVM chain IDs. In order to turn it into hex, you do .string 16. Let's save that. But it should be params. Okay, cool. Now we're on the Sepolia test network. The next thing we need to do is set up an ethers provider. In order to do that, we need to import ethers by npm I ethers, and I'm going to be using version 5.7.2. Enter. And let's start the server back up. Now to make a new ETH provider, we'll make a variable for it and set it equal to new ethers, which we need to import. Let's do that up here. Enter. I always like using IntelliSense so you know that you're not going to make a typo. And we want ether.providers. We want exactly that, Web3 provider, and put in the provider here. And now we're going to get the Ethereum address of the wallet. Once we get that, we're going to want to use it and display it in our UI. In order to do that, that means we need a new state variable, but we're also going to make a new state variable to store this embedded wallet as well. So we want two new state variables. One for the wallet balance, but we want this to be a string, not a number. And a second one for the embedded wallet. We do want this to be type any, but instead of null, let's do an empty string. And filling out the rest of the function, Let's get the wallet balance, and to do that we do await ETH provider dot get balance, and we want to put in the embedded wallet dot address. Now let's convert it to something that's more user friendly, because when you get a balance from the blockchain, there's no decimal places, and where the decimal place would be is 18 spots ahead. So let's convert it to something more friendly using ethers. ETH string amount equals ethers dot utils. Exactly that. Dot format ether, and then we're going to convert this wallet balance into something more friendly. Let's store this in the state variable, and let's also store the embedded wallet and save. Now our dependency array is getting mad at us, so let's add in ready so that yellow squiggly goes away. And now we're ready to show the user their balance and their address. Underneath this div here, we're going to make a new p tag and say the address of the embedded wallet is, and display that embedded wallet question mark just in case it's null, so TypeScript doesn't get mad at us, dot address. And underneath this we want to conditionally render just in case there is no wallet balance. So exactly this, we're just, if this is a null type value, then this won't display. If it's not, then this will display, and that means the user has a balance. So let's make p tags here and say with a balance of wallet balance ETH. Save that, head on over to our UI, give it a nice refresh, and we can see here the address of the embedded wallet, which is the same as this one. That's what we want. And we can see our balance is 0 ETH. Let's send it some ETH. I'm going to copy this address here, open up my MetaMask, make sure you're on Sepolia. I'm on my dev wallet, so it has some Sepolia ETH. If you need some Sepolia ETH, I'll link in the description the Alchemy faucet where you can get some. And I'm going to be sending it to the address that I copied. Let's do 0.02. Next. Confirm. It completed. Let's give our page a refresh. And we can see here with a balance of 0.2 ETH. Up next, we're going to give the user the option to log out. So let's head back to VS Code. Privy makes it extremely simple to log out. We're also going to get log out from the use Privy hook and make a new button to save us some time. I'm just going to paste it in. All I did was make a new div and I pasted in a button called logout with class names that are just the same as this. And when the user clicks the logout button, it calls the logout function, which is imported from the use Privy hook right here. What it's going to do is going to make the authenticated boolean, which is here, turn from true to false. So when that happens, we want to push the user back to the home page. In order to do that, underneath the use effect, if ready and not authenticated, what we want to do is router, which we need to import use router again. So use router from next/navigation. Underneath these hooks, to const router equals use router, and then we want router dot push to our home page. Last thing before we move on, in this div here, let's add some margin bottom so that the address and balance has a little spacing underneath where the user can select to link accounts. Now let's test out the logout function. We see there's this new logout button. It should bring us back to the home page. And it did. Now let's log back in. Email and social. Remember that we linked our GitHub account, So we originally signed up with Twitter, but we linked our GitHub. So now let's sign in with the GitHub account. Remember, it should show that we have 0.02 ETH. And there it is. And it shows that both accounts are linked. Now I'm going to show you how you can sign a message using the embedded wallet. This component is getting pretty big, so let's make the sign message its own component. So underneath here, it doesn't exist yet, but we're going to make a new component called sign message. And we want to send down some child stuff. The first one being the user. And the next called sign message, which doesn't exist yet, but we are going to send down sign a message from, guess where? If you guessed from the use Privy hook, you are correct. Please request 1 ETH from Vitalik for being right. Okay, so now we have this. Sorry about that stupid joke. Anyways, we have this component that doesn't exist yet. In the app directory, let's make a new file called, not inside the providers, make sure it is in the root of the app directory. And actually that was from the first time. Okay, components, and inside this, we want it to be called sign message.tsx. And we're going to do the shortcut, but this time we want TS first, or this one, CE, because now it has props. And remember, we have 2 props. They are sign message and user. And they go here, sign message any. The user is not going to be any. The user is going to be of type user, which we can get from the Privy SDK, but that's not what we want. We want user. And erase this, use Privy, and put it here. And save. Now it should say sign message on our UI. Let's refresh this. We need to import it. So head back to the page.tsx. Just go right here in front of the E, erase it, and write it again. Now we should be able to import it and save. And we want camel case here, so change this to a lowercase s. Head back to Brave, sign message. Cool. Now let's work on the sign message component. So heading back over here, inside the div, erase sign message, it's going to be a button called sign a message. We're just learning how to sign a message, so this isn't going to really do anything. We're just going to sign some test message and underneath display the signature. Let's give the button some classes. We're going to use the same classes as before. Just paste in, so it's just a classic green button. On click. I'm going to leave this blank for now because we need some setup first. So this is going to say blank, and let's disable it if the user doesn't have a wallet. But we want to make sure this is null. What this sign a message button is going to do is it's going to display a UI that Privy makes it really easy to display. That's a little like modal thingy, and it shows the message that the user is going to be signing, as well as a little description. The message and the config setup is in their docs, but to save us time, I'm going to paste it in. So you can see here, there's a variable called message. This is the message we're going to be signing. This is a test message for the signing feature, and this is for the UI of the config. So there's a title, a description, and a button text. And these all just talk about how this is just for test purposes. Now we're going to need 2 state variables. One to show when the user is signed or not, so we can conditionally render the signature underneath. So let's call it has signed because it's going to be a Boolean and start it off as false. And underneath we want the signature, exactly that. Now we need to import useState. Now we can work on the onClick function. We're just going to write it in here because it's short. It's going to be an async function that takes in nothing. And what it does is it returns the signature when we call sign message that we imported here, taking in the message in the UI config, exactly that. We want to set the signature first, do this, make has signed to true. And now underneath the button, we can display the signature. We only want to render it when has signed is true. What we're going to do is a paragraph tag, add some margin up top, and say signed message with signature, and put the signature here. Now heading over to the UI, let's test this out. We see here now there's this new sign a message button. We click it. Here's the modal I was telling you about with the UI here that we set in the object, as well as the message for the button. So this is the actual message that's being signed right here. And let's sign it. And there we go. We sign that message with this signature. On to the last step, where I'm going to show you how to send a transaction using the embedded wallet. The send transaction component is going to be similar to the sign message component. So let's head back to the main page, the logged in page. And underneath the logged in page, let's make a new component called send transaction. And this we wanted to take in user again. And we also want it to send down send transaction. Which we do not have yet, but we will get it from the use Privy hook. And it's getting mad at us because it doesn't exist. So inside of our components folder, let's make a new file called send transaction.tsx. Then the quick setup ts, and click this one. This is from one of the extensions I have. I believe it's React something. Yeah, it's this one right here. So if you don't have this extension, download this because it's nice. You can do these nice little shortcuts. The props is going to take our user and send transaction. I'm heading over to the sign message component just to save time. Copy this user input, paste it here because the type of the user is the user and send transaction is any. Now heading back to the logged in page, right in front of send transaction, backspace the N, click it again, import it, save. It should say send transaction right here. Heading back to VS Code, into the component. Now let's send a transaction to ourselves just so we can see how you can send a transaction with the embedded wallet. All this is going to return is actually a button. And I'm just going to paste it in to save us some time. Now this function obviously doesn't exist yet. We're going to create it next. We want this button to be disabled if the user doesn't have a wallet. And this is the exact same styling that we've used for every single button, except for now that there's some margin on the top to give it some spacing. Let's make this function. Make sure it's asynchronous because we're going to be making some calls to the blockchain. Let's do const ETH amount and set it equal to a string of 0.01. And now we need to convert this to way because that is what it needs to be when you interact with the blockchain. If you don't know what way is, give it a quick Google, but it is the 18 decimal places I was telling you earlier. Now that we have the way, we need to convert this to hex. And in order to do that, we do exactly this. ethers.utils.hexlify and enter in the amount. And when we converted it to way, it was ether.utils.parseether. Next, we need to create an unsigned transaction. 2, we want to send to ourselves. So first, let's make sure that we have a wallet. And if we do, we want to do that. We want to send it to our address, user.wallet.address. If we don't, we'll just set it as blank. Chain ID, we don't need to convert to hex, which is nice. We can just make it the normal number, which is this number for Sepolia. and the value is the hex way value. So this here. Now we need a UI config for the modal that pops up. The same type of modal pops up like it did in send transaction. I'm just going to paste it in. It has a header, description, and a button, and it's just displaying exactly what's happening. And now to finish it out, we're going to make sure the user has a wallet once again. And then we're going to call that send transaction that we sent down, taking in the unsigned transaction and the UI config. Let's head on over to Brave and test it out. Let's click the button to send ETH to ourselves. We can see this modal pops up again. It shows it big in a user-friendly way of dollars, and then underneath we can see it's SEP for Sepolia ETH. And here is part of the display of the UI that we set up. Let's click send to send this money to ourselves. And there we go. We successfully sent ETH to ourselves. If we refresh this page, we will see our balance is now less than 0.02. Why do you think that's the case? If you answered because of gas, you are correct. You can now also request another 1 ETH from Vitalik. And that wraps up the demo. I'll leave the link to the GitHub in the comments that it contains the final code. While this app doesn't have any practical use, you now know how to create an embedded wallet using Privy. We also learned how to allow users to link multiple Web2 social accounts to one wallet and display which socials are linked. They also know how to display their wallet address and balance, sign messages, send transactions, and log out. If you have any questions, please drop them in the comments. I hope you enjoyed the video and learned something new.